So I'm going to go over the basic rules of simplifying exponents, and then we'll do some practice. So if I have this first one here, this is called a power to a power because I'm taking a power, the second power, and I'm raising it up to another power. So this is where I'm going to multiply. So this one is going to become, x to the sixth power. 2 times 3 is 6. If they are on the same level, so there are no parentheses here, right? So this is where I'm going to add them. So this is addition. So x squared times x to the third is x to the fifth. 2 plus 3 is 5. Okay, then if I have a fraction. So what I talk about when I teach this is I talk about where you have more of the exponents or where they're heavier. So can you see I have more exponents going on in the bottom on this fraction, but yet on this fraction over here I have more on the top. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to subtract them. So 3 minus 2 is 1. But my final answer is going to be wherever so this is going to be subtraction. My final answer is going to be wherever there's more of them. So 3 minus 2 is 1, so it's going to be x to the first on the bottom. Where this one over here, it starts out with more on the top, so this is x to the first. And if you want to put it over 1 or not over 1, it doesn't matter, right? Okay, so see that? So you just subtract them. I use this division line to remind me that I'm doing subtraction. So it looks like a subtraction sign, so if that helps you, just know that when you have some on the bottom and some on the top, you're going to subtract them, and you're just going to put them wherever there's more of them. Okay? If I have a negative exponent, so whenever you have negative exponents, you have to have a fraction. So if it's not currently a fraction, go ahead and make it into a fraction. See how I put that over negative or over positive 1? And then what I teach is I tell my students to circle the negative exponent. So circle whatever's negative. And the cool thing is that if you have any negative exponent, you can move it to the other side of the fraction and it magically makes it positive. So if it's on the top, I'm going to move it down. And if it's on the bottom, I'm going to move it up. So these two fractions become 1 over x squared. So now it's a positive x squared, not a negative x to the x to the negative 2. And on this other one, I'm going to move that to the top. So that's going to be x squared, a positive x squared, over 1. And if you can put it over 1 or not put it over 1. It doesn't matter. And the last rule that we're going to talk about is anything raised to the 0 power is just the number 1. So that's just something you're going to have to memorize, that if you see anything to the 0 power, it's 1. But remember, I could have something that looks like, 3x in parentheses, all raised to the 0 power, so that whole thing equals 1. Okay? So now what I want to do is I want to just do a few examples, and you might, if you think you know what you're doing, you might want to just go ahead and stop. You can stop the video after I write a problem on the screen and then check your answer. So let's start with an easy one. What if we have 3x squared y to the negative 1? Okay, so all I notice here is that I have a negative exponent. So what I like to do is I like to circle my exponents. I'm going to make it into a fraction. You can always put anything over 1. And this negative exponent simply goes down. It's the only piece that goes down. So this just becomes 3x squared over y to the 1 power. You could put the 1 or not put the 1. It doesn't matter. And this is your final answer. So there's a couple things I want to talk about with your final answer. My little checklist that I go through. What you have to make sure is that there are no negative exponents. Your final answer cannot have any negative exponents in it. So this does not have any negative exponents. And also, every variable can only be listed one time. You can't have x's on the top and x's on the bottom or multiple x's on the top. And you also shouldn't have any parentheses. So no parentheses, no negative exponents, and every variable listed once. As long as you satisfy all of those conditions, then this is your final answer. So let's do another one. Let's try 2x squared y to the negative 2 all over 4 x to the negative 1 y cubed. Okay, so the very first thing I like to do is I like to get rid of my negative exponents. That's the first step I like to do. So anything that's negative, I circle it and I move it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a fraction line. And anything that was positive, I'm going to leave alone. So 2x squared, that stays there. And I have 4y cubed. That stays there. So everything that did not get circled stays on the level that it was. So if it was on the top, it stays on the top. And if it was on the bottom, it stays on the bottom. Then I go through and I move anything that's negative, right? So I'm going to move that these y squareds to the bottom, and I'm going to move the x to the -1 to the top. Okay, so this becomes y squared on the bottom, and I have x to the first on the top. Remember, the exponents become positive after you move them. So we're almost done. I have no negatives and I have no parentheses, but I do have variables listed more than once. So now what I need to do is I need to just combine those into one variable. I only want to have x's listed one time. So remember your rule. If they're on the same level, there's no parentheses here, then I add these two. So this simply becomes, I draw my little fraction here, so I'm going to have 2x to the third over 4 y to the fifth. And then one last final thing that you should always do is you should always just check your numbers, your coefficients, and see if you can simplify them. So I can simplify 2 over 4, right? So 2 over 4 just becomes 1 x cubed over 2 y to the fifth. Go through my checklist one last time. I have no negative exponents, I have no parentheses, and every variable is listed only once, so this is my final answer. Okay, I'm going to do one more example. Okay, let's do 2x, y. Let's give ourselves some parentheses. Okay, so if I have parentheses, what I need to do is I need to distribute this parenthesis. So that's going to be my first step. If there is no exponent listed, you can go ahead and put a 1, right? Because x without an exponent is just x to the first power, and y without an exponent is y to the first, right? We just generally don't write the 1 there. But I think it helps when you're simplifying exponents to kind of put that 1 there just as a placeholder to remind you where they are. So then this 3 has to be distributed to every exponent, and what we're going to do is we're going to multiply. So this is a power to a power. So that's where I multiply. So this simply becomes 2 to the third, x to the third, y to the third. My denominator is, I'm not going to change it yet. I just wanted to write that out first. Okay, so now what I like to do again is I like to get rid of my negative exponents. So I'm going to write this fraction again. And I can also, I'm going to evaluate 2 to the third. This is not getting moved. It's a positive 2 to the third. I'm just going to evaluate it. So 2 to the third is positive 8. So I'm going to write that as just an 8. X to the third, y to the third. They didn't change places. I have a 4 and I have a y on the bottom. But this x to the first has to go to the top. So all I did here was I moved this x to the first to the top because it was negative. Okay? So I can simplify. First thing I want to do is I maybe want to simplify my numbers. So 8 over 4 are both divisible by 4. So 8 divided by 4 is 2, and 4 divided by 4 is just 1. It doesn't matter if you put that 1 there. The next thing I want to do is I see a bunch of x's on the same level. So if they're on the same level, that's where we add our exponents. So that's going to be x to the fourth. And then I have a few y's. I have some y's on the top and y's on the bottom. Remember, if there's no exponent, it's really like y to the 1. So remember I said we use this division line, this this marker between our two in the middle of our fraction to remind us that we're going to subtract. So 3 minus 1 is 2, but I'm starting out with more on the top. So that is going to be y squared on the top. So this, now as long as I have, let's go through my checklist, no parentheses, no negative exponents, and every variable is only listed one time, so this is my final answer. Whether I list this 1 down here on the bottom or not, it doesn't matter. It's either way is fine. Okay, so here are just 2 more examples I want to go over. So what I want you to do, I think you should stop the video right now and see if you can work these out on your own, and then when you're done, turn the video back on and I will walk you through them. So please turn it off. Alright, so the answers to these are, I see a bunch of negative exponents. Ooh, and I also see something to the 0 power. Ooh, anything to the 0 power, no matter how ugly it is just 1. So this whole denominator is just 1. This whole thing is being raised to the 0 power. So that's just 1. Then I'm going to have 3x to the fourth, and that y to the negative 1 has to move down to the bottom. So let me just clean that up a little bit. That's just going to be 3x to the fourth over y to the 1, or y to the first. It doesn't matter if you write that 1 there or not, and that's your final answer. So if you got this answer, great. Awesome. Okay, first thing I want to do is get rid of my parentheses. So I like to write, make sure everybody has an exponent first, because it helps me to remember how to distribute this thing. It's very, very common for people to remember to distribute this 2 to the negative 1 and to the 3, so they get negative 2 and 6. But so many people forget that that 2 gets distributed to this 2 out front, so it's going to become 2 squared. Extremely common mistake people make. So this is going to be 2 squared, x to the negative 2, y to the 6th. And on the bottom I have 16. Oop, anything to the 0 power, that's just 1, so I don't even need to write that, right? And that's just going to be y squared. Okay, so I've got some negative things going on, and I can evaluate this guy, right? This 2 squared. So this becomes, 2 squared is going to become 4. I still have my y to the 6th on the top. I have 16 on the bottom, y squared, and this x squared goes down to the bottom. So x squared goes down to the bottom. And the last simplification is simply going to be 4 over 16 just becomes 1 over 4. And what I can do is, because I have y's on the top and bottom, I'm going to subtract them, and I have more on the top. So 6 minus 2 is 4. So I'm going to have y to the 4th on the top, and that x squared is still on the bottom. Again, every exponent is only listed one time, no negative exponent, so this is my final answer. And hopefully you got that as an answer.